Hey guys, back with another educational video, and today I want to talk about fat burning versus fat loss. Now I see a lot of people make claims, usually with relevance to ketogenic diets or low carb diets, about their effects on fat burning. Fat burning is not the same thing as actual fat loss, and I talk about this a lot in my book, Fat Loss Forever. Fat burning is just the process of oxidizing fat, meaning you are burning fat. But whether or not you lose fat or gain fat depends on the balance between fat deposition and fat oxidation. Okay, it's kind of like net protein balance. So in order to be anabolic, your rate of synthesis has to be greater than your rate of degradation. In the case of fat, your rate of oxidation needs to be greater than your rate of fat storage or deposition in order for you to lose body fat. Let's take two different examples of like a high carb diet that's low in fat versus a high fat diet that's low in carbs. Now in a high fat diet that's low in carbs, your levels of carb oxidation are going to be low and your levels of fat oxidation are going to be really high. That's because you're eating more fat, your insulin's lower, not inhibiting fat oxidation, and you're burning more fat. But you're also storing more fat. There's various research papers showing that of the fat we store, only about 1 to 2% of it comes from dietary carbohydrate. So only 1 to 2% of those carbons wind up in adipose tissue. The vast majority of the fat we store comes from the fat we eat. So if you're eating a high fat diet that's low in carbs, you'll be burning a lot of fat, yes, but you're also going to be storing a lot of fat. Now, if we look at a high carb diet, your rates of fat oxidation are going to be low because you're eating more carbs, you're having insulin release, that's suppressing fat oxidation. But because you're not eating much dietary fat, you're also not storing much fat. The net gain or loss of actual body fat is going to depend on energy balance. That is calories in versus calories out. Kevin Hall, a researcher with the NIH, did a great study on this. He looked at a high carb diet, over 300 grams of carbohydrate a day, and it was low fat, I think 17 grams of fat, versus a high fat diet, I think it was over 100 grams of fat per day, and under 20 grams of carbs. And what he found was that on the whole, both diets lost about the same amount of fat. In fact, the low fat diet actually lost just a little bit more body fat than the low carb diet over the course of 4 weeks. Further, there was not a big increase in energy expenditure in the low carb group like a lot of people claim there should be because of low insulin. And the low carb group actually lost more lean body mass and had more nitrogen excretion than the low fat group. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do a low carb diet. If it's something that's easy for you to stick to and you like it better, then your ability to adhere to that is going to far outweigh any small differences in fat loss and lean body mass retention. What this research does show is great news, which is that if you eat enough protein and you control your calories, whether you use carbohydrate or fat or a balance of both, any of them will work and you'll get similar results. So you can do what you prefer. Again, calories in, calories out, but keeping in mind, again, people get this wrong so many times and I feel like I beat this like a dead horse. But calories in and calories out are not static numbers. And people say things like, well, I tracked my calories and didn't lose fat. Well, you can have a budget and not save money. If you didn't lose fat, you weren't in a calorie deficit. Now, you may have been in what you calculated was a calorie deficit based on some online calculators or based on what should be a deficit for you and didn't lose fat. More than likely, you weren't tracking correctly because most people under-track by about 50%. But it boils down to energy balance. I'm not saying all calories are the same, even though they really are because calories are a unit of heat. All sources of calories are not the same. Protein and fiber have a greater impact on thermogenesis, which is why it makes sense to eat a high protein, high fiber diet. But with carbs and fats, you can choose what you like. If you eat a higher carb diet that's lower in fat, you will store less fat, you will burn less fat. If you eat a high fat diet that's lower in carbs, you will store more fat, you will burn more fat. The net gain or loss of actual body fat tissue will depend on energy balance. If you'd like to learn more, I talk about this a lot in grave detail in my book, Fat Loss Forever. You can click the link in the description and pick it up and check out some of our other books. All right, guys, hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll catch you next week.